So we're ready for the next step.
And what's that?
Well, they say you got to clean the wood before you actually apply the finish.
Okay.
And the purpose of this, it's called their raw wood cleaner. The purpose of it is to apply it with a rag, and it actually pulls the dust off. So it electrostatically pulls the dust away from the project. Because one thing with Rubio is that they say if you have a little bit of dust on it, the finish will grab onto the dust and not the project.
Ooh,
so,
not good, huh?
Nope. So, take an air hose, go over it, get everything off, wipe it down with the raw wood cleaner, and that'll pull any remaining dust. Because if there is remaining dust in it, then that's what the Rubio sticks to, is the dust instead of the actual project.
Oh.
So we got to get him all wiped down, and then we'll move on to the next step.
Well, that sounds like a good thing for you to do.
Yeah, so you go back on vacation. I'll give you a shout when we're ready.
Right. Vacation. Yeah. All right, I'll check back.
All right, sounds good. Job. I'll get started here. All right, we're just going to apply our raw wood cleaner. Get this guy cleaned up. Try and get all the most difficult spots first. So we'll just keep going here. Just keep using clean parts of the rag as much as you can. Grab a new rag halfway through if it starts looking dirty. You can definitely tell it's lifting some of the dust off of here. So it's working. I saw something online that said you could use acetone instead. I wouldn't do that. I would just stick with the Rubio system. That way you're not going to run into any surprises later on down the road. Okay, I think we're ready to go on to the next step. Okay, so now here's the fun part. We get to apply the finish. So there's a few things to keep in mind, but let's revisit why we're using it in the first place. Number one, it's not like a traditional varnish or polyurethane. So it's a one-coat system. This means several things. The first thing is that I don't have to sand in between coats. I don't have to apply a coat, sand, apply a coat, sand. That process takes 2 to 3 days. This is a one-coat system, so it's a one and done. The other thing is that it's going to have a nice raw wood feel to it, similar to what would be like an oil or something like that if you applied it. But unlike oil, this does harden and provides a lot of protection. Another key feature is that when you apply it, you don't have to worry about overlap marks. Since it bonds on a molecular level, overlaps are eliminated. Now there's a couple of ways to apply it, and it does matter on the application. Because again, we're trying to rub this finish into the wood as much as we can. One way is to use a squeegee or a rubber spatula like I have. And then once you pour it on, you're just working that finish into the pores of the wood. That doesn't work so well on this project because this little horse has got a lot of ins and outs. If you're doing a dining room table or something like that, then a squeegee is a great way to go. But that's not what we're going to do today. The second way to do it is to use Rubio's application pads. And that's exactly what this is. It's just a white pad. We can use it for application, but also for removing excess finish after you apply it. Now what I like to do, since we got a small project here, is I like to just take some scissors, cut that piece up, and get some smaller pieces out of one. That way I can get into all these little tight spots. Another little helper that I found are these foam brushes. Now we're not going to use this on the entire thing, but it's perfect for getting into little spots and little corners. So I can use a wet brush to apply it, switch out to a dry brush to remove any excess. Okay, so now it's time to mix. This comes in what they call an oil plus 2C. So you can use this component on its own, easy peasy, no worries. Or you can mix it with what they call an accelerator. The nice thing about the accelerator is that it speeds up the drying time. So you mix 3 parts of the oil to 1 part of the accelerator, and then I'm just going to mix it up in this little cup. Now what I've found is a little goes a long ways. So rather than using the graduations on the cup, I'm just going to pour in I'm going to do 3 capfuls of our Oil Plus 2C. And then I'm going to do 1 capful of our Part B accelerator. And now we stir. You want to make sure and mix it up really well. One thing I really like about Rubio 2 is that it doesn't have a smell to it. It's got a very nice, pleasant smell, where a lot of finishes sometimes have a pretty strong odor to them. So if you're doing some finishing inside your home or something like that, this isn't going to smell too bad. Now once it's mixed, you've got about 5 to 6 hours to use this. So we should have plenty of time. I'm going to get started on the top of the pony here. What I like to do when I finish is get all the hard spots first. Like I said, since this doesn't overlap any, it makes it way more forgiving. So I'm just going to take a foam brush to get started and get all those little 90-degree corners and those ins and outs. And that foam brush is perfect for getting down in there. I'm going to come up and around this dowel. Get around there, going ahead and coat that dowel then too. Okay, we'll get his eye here and these recesses up in here. Lots of little ins and outs on this guy. Boy, he's gonna look good though. This is impressive already. Come in here on the back edge. Okay. So now I'm going to switch to the small applicator pad. I'm just going to put a little dab on there. Okay. Then we're just going to work that in as even as we can get it. Oh yeah, that's gorgeous. Just like they do with the squeegees on the furniture, that's what we're doing with this pad. We're just really trying to push that into the grain. You know, and do your best just to get it on as even as possible, just like you would with a regular varnish or finish. But don't forget, we're going to come back and we're going to take all that excess off. So there again, a little more forgiving than a traditional finish. Just like the applicator pad, if you're using a foam brush, keep working it in there. Which this handle was a brand new piece because the handle and the foot pegs on him broke off. So I had to turn some new pieces. So that cherry's naturally going to be a little lighter than the rest of him. But cherry will darken over time and it'll all even out. Give it 6 months and 6 months to a year and it'll all be the same color. You know, you can kind of use a combination of this foam brush and the applicator pad. That works pretty good. So with the idea that we have 3 to 5 minutes to let this cure and 15 minutes to rub this down, we got to move along pretty good. So I'm not going to worry about these inside faces right now. I'm just going to concentrate on the parts that we see. And then what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll do those inside faces separately. You know, in some ways this is really forgiving because if I was actually applying varnish with that brush, boy, there's a lot of ins and outs here. So not having any worries about overlap marks, that's kind of a big deal. Okay, everything's been applied, and the next step is to remove all the excess finish. You can use one of these white applicator pads. It pulls it off fine. Again, you can cut them up in small pieces to get into all those tight spaces. As you're wiping it off, you'll find that these applicator pads can fill up on one side. So just flip them over and use the other side once they fill up. I also discovered that it can be difficult to get the finish off in certain areas. I also ended up using a disposable rag that's lint-free, and it really allows me to get in all those tight spaces, and it worked great. The big takeaway here is make sure and remove as much of the finish off as you can. You don't want to leave any shiny spots behind. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do here Just take a dry foam brush. I'm going to get all the excess out of these corners. All right, now all that's left to do is really just let it dry. And we'll come back tomorrow and see what we have. This is a pretty good reflection though of what you're going to see tomorrow. It's got that nice natural look and feel to it.